All right, John. Normally I let you take the reins and propose topics. Today, I've got one for you. Ready? Widely practiced, but little understood secrets to bad writing. Got a handful of them.
And I'm an expert on that. 40 years of teaching at the college and university level. I think I'm an expert on that.
First one. Ready? Never rewrite. Your first draft is always perfect because you're a fucking genius.
Absolutely not correct. The thing about it is, as I've told you and all my students hundreds and hundreds, thousands of times, literally, over the 40 years I taught, that the secret of writing is rewriting. And Justice Brandeis, the Supreme Court, who Brandeis University is named after, said that there's no such thing as good legal writing. There's only good legal rewriting. So there's so many examples of this, but my favorite example to my students is the Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo's masterpiece. And people go there and they look up and they say, my God, what an inspired work of genius. This is, the creativity is unbelievable. Of course it is. But then what you can do is, in the corner of the Sistine Chapel, there's a kiosk where you can buy trinkets and books and rosaries and all sort of Catholic paraphernalia. But you can also buy a book. It's entitled The Cartoons of Michelangelo. And cartoons are preliminary sketches in Italian. Preliminary sketches of something. I don't speak Italian, so I could be wrong, but I think I'm really close on that. And the cartoons of Michelangelo, what he did, everything that he put up on the ceiling, he diagrammed and worked out first in a shit draft on paper. And then when he got it right, how many times he wrote those cartoons, who knows? But the point is, when he got it right on paper, then he, after much effort, then he went up to the ceiling and painted it on the ceiling. So I always use that as an example of, not just in writing, but in all art. I mean, I'm sure that musicians, they don't just come up with, maybe they come up with a melody or they come up with a tune that they think will be, touch the hearts of the masses. But they surely have to rewrite it and rescore it or whatever you do. I know nothing about music, nor do I care to. But the secret of writing is rewriting. So people who write one draft, they're writing for their ego, if they think that they're that good. Because I can't think of any authors that don't rewrite the endings of their novels in order to fit with the beginning of their novels. Because when you start out a novel, you have an idea where you want to go. But over the course of time, things happen. It grows spontaneously, okay? And so therefore you have to when you get to the end, you have to go back to the beginning, so it kind of foreshadows the end. You see what I mean?
Sure, yeah. And even if you're writing nonfiction, I mean, we're not talking about necessarily major structural issues. If you're writing a proposal for a new, business idea you have, or a pitch inside a big company, or as you mentioned, a legal brief, and so on. But if you want to write poorly, just crank out one draft, and then
Absolutely.
Send it in. But otherwise, you probably want to spend a little time thinking over much more seriously exactly what you wanted to say, and whether the word choice is there, whether your sentences are run on, just basic grammar and also structure. So anyway, well, good. One down.
I have to apologize. I've got can you hear that I have a frog in my throat?
Just a little bit. It's fine.
Ribbit. Ribbit.
Oh, I can hear that.
Ribbit. Ribbit.
You may need to see
And don't forget,
an amphibiologist or something.
I need to see a veterinarian.
Right.
I also have a turkey. Gobble gobble.
You've
Gobble,
got
gobble.
a lot of issues. Yeah.
Gobble gobble.
An
Happy
avian
Thanksgiving.
specialist.
Gobble, gobble.
You're going to be looking at a
Gobble,
lot
gobble.
of fellowship-trained veterinary people soon. All right, ready? Let's move on.
I want to apply for a lot of government grants. Okay, go ahead. What?
Second secret to writing poorly. Use long words in sentences when short ones will do. You'll look smarter that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A wonderful way to confuse your audience. Perfect. Yeah. I can think of several examples. to the worst books ever written for a lay audience. Now, there might be 7 people in the world that understand Ulysses, horrible book. And even worse, Finnegan's Wake. What an absolute piece of shit. Finnegan's Wake. I dare any normal human being that hasn't majored in deconstructive, I don't know, whatever they do, to read Finnegan's Wake and understand. Just read 3 or 4 pages of Finnegan's Wake and understand, see if you understand one word he's saying. It's ridiculous. It's meant to impress a large segment of the intellectual, the intelligentsias. And it's just horrible, horrible writing. And it passes off as art because no one understands it. Okay.
Now, this applies if you want to write
it's
poorly.
Like Jackson. It's like Jackson Pollock. What a wonderful artist. Take a paint can and spill it, and that's art. There's no rewriting, there's no reworking it, or anything like that.
Yeah, he
It's
probably didn't
horrible.
sketch out
So
his paintings in advance, and they don't sell them in the kiosk at the corner of the Jackson Pollock Museum. This is my suspicion. Not to belittle Jackson Pollock, because there are a lot of folks that actually think highly of his art, John. But here, not just novels, right? I mean, business jargon, and there's nothing wrong with jargon if you're speaking to an insider audience where you need to communicate succinctly in a shared sort of specialist vocabulary. But if you're using the word utilize, that's a really good key into knowing that maybe you're slipping into dangerous waters as far as clarity and brevity, right? So if you're seeing a lot of utilizes in your writing instead of use, that could be one. You could be pursuing not great writing just unwittingly. So yes, that's the second one. Anything else on that topic, or should we move on?
Well, 2 things. One, about using words. I have a great bumper sticker, surprisingly, in the bumper of my car. But anyway, it's a great bumper sticker, and it says, and only about 12 people in the world would understand it, but they'd love it if they saw it. It says, sesquipedalian words tend to obfuscate rather than elucidate. And it's hilarious if you know what these words mean. No one knows these words. I mean, most people don't. And so why don't you say, what it means basically is big words tend to confuse people rather than enlighten them or make them smarter.
Clarify.
So I have this wonderful, clarify. And so I have that wonderful example in my car. It also reminds me of a modern day example of Ulysses and Finnegan's Wake as, what's it called? The Infant Jest. Is that right?
David Foster
Infinite
Wallace's
Jest.
master work, yeah. So
Yeah, an absolute piece of shit. I mean, it stinks, okay? Like a skunk's bunghole. It's so bad. He uses all these words. And my God, isn't he smart? When you read works like that, like his work, and like James Joyce, you read it and you think, holy mackerel, this guy is so smart because he uses such big polysyllabic, many-syllable words, right? He must be a genius, and I must have learned something. You didn't learn shit. You learned about maybe 100 big words, and you forgot 1,000 big words. It's just horrible.
All right.
Use simple words to reach your audience, unless they're a bunch of scholars who study Joyce or something. Then you could talk about Joyce, but
now keep
just
in
use
mind
simple
these are
words.
especially Infinite Jest more recently. Wallace is viewed as a really good book, and people look at Finnegan's Wake as this
Not by
masterwork
me.
too. Now, hold on, but the key is you disagree, and that's a perfectly fair thing stance to take. But most people using big words, right, and long sentences are not going to achieve what a Joyce or a David Foster Wallace or a Henry James, another of your very favorite authors, maybe would have gotten done. So be careful. Keep it simple if you want to write well. If you want to write poorly, really long words, really long sentences. Third widely practiced but little understood secret to bad writing is pay no attention to your audience. They have loads of patience, and they will adapt to you.
Absolutely. That's a wonderful way not to reach your audience, okay? As you well know, the only 2 constraints that any writer, any author, any artist has to consider are audience and purpose. who is your audience and what's your purpose. So if you want to really, confuse your audience, make sure that you write above their needs. And whatever you do to be a good, bad writer, I love that oxymoron, to be a good, bad writer is never define words in context or what we call appositionally. John, comma, my teacher, comma, is an asshole. All right. So my teacher is an apposition, redefines me. If you said John is an asshole, well, who's John? But now if I say John, comma, my teacher, comma, is a jerk, in apposition, John is the asshole. So never define for your writers words that might be unknown to them.
Or
sure,
conversely, if you have an audience that knows a whole lot about your topic, define everything in apposition. Like totally
absolutely
baby them,
right,
because they'll really appreciate the extra words and time that they're spending reading your
Make
stuff.
sure you talk down to your audience. That always endears it to them. I had a kid that was applying for a residency after 3 years at Michigan Med School in pediatric oncology, and he gave me his personal statement, and he had defined all these terms appositionally. I can't, it's so confusing to me because I'm not a pediatric oncologist, but he was going, this was his personal statement. I tore it apart and I said, look, and I did that for the benefits of my students. I never wanted to hurt them. I want them to get into med school, grad school, law school, or get into residency they wanted to get into. But I said, what you're doing is you're talking down. Every single person that's going to read your personal statement doesn't need to have these words defined because they're experts in the field. They know more than you do. You're going to them to complete your residency. What you need to do, take all those appositional definitions out. And then, because you're being supercilious and talking down to them. You don't want to do that.
Yep.
Supercilious is did I ever talk about supercilious?
No.
Supercilious.
It sounds
it's a great word. It means to talk. It means to talk. What?
No, go ahead.
It means to talk down to people, right? Mm-hmm. But super is above, right? And cilia is either your eyebrows or your eyelashes. So if you're above supercilious, if you're above your eyelashes, eyebrows, you're talking down to people. Isn't that interesting?
I think that's cool.
Yes, it is.
I had
John.
no idea.
Yeah, it is.
So,
yeah.
All right, ready? The fourth widely practiced but little understood secret to bad writing is tell, don't show.
Never ever use details.
Yeah.
Make sure you use abstractions because that really it gives the reader nothing palpable to grab a hold of, nothing tangible. So always use abstractions. Never use details, and just tell. Never show.
Yeah.
Because this will also, it's like using big words. It confuses the reader because the reader has no fucking idea what you're writing
Which
about.
is perfect if you want to be a bad writer.
Perfect. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Got
Yeah,
it.
that's a key. One of the major keys to being a bad writer. Yeah.
All right, number 5, write what you just learned on Wikipedia.
Absolutely. Never write from a standpoint of personal knowledge because everybody can go and follow you on or find your facts on Wikipedia or Facebook or whatever they're doing. Just never establish a voice. Make your prose sterile and absolutely boring by not using personal details. Make sure you do that. And this will win you, if you're a lawyer, this will win you a lot of cases in court if you don't paint your clients as a human being, but just paint them as some sort of a sterile nerd.
Yeah. Well, and also just more
exactly.
broadly speaking, it's useful as a life skill if you want to be a bad writer is to read almost nothing if possible. Try to keep your interests as narrow as you can, because otherwise you may pick up little tidbits here and there that could infuse your writing and make it better. And that's something you're going to want to avoid in order to be a superbly bad writer.
Oh, for sure. This is that's very important. Yeah, become uninformed.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah.
Which for many Americans is more or
and
less.
never whatever you do not cite authoritative sources like the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Washington Post. No,
or
never
primary
do that.
sources.
Yeah.
Worst of all, somebody that or a writing that actually has an authority, has a first person insight into it. Related to that,
And,
go ahead.
and by the way, in the climate we live in now, make sure that you avoid science. And don't ever, ever, ever consult scientific experts. Like, I don't follow sports. What's that idiot that's the quarterback for the Wall Street, no, for the Green Bay Packers? What's
Yeah,
his name?
Aaron Rodgers you're referring to, yeah.
Aaron Rodgers. What a walking idiot. I mean, on a God, here's this guy who throws a pigskin through the air, and then he makes $25 million a year.
35.
And he's, but the point is though, what is he did his own research. What has he got, a PhD in cellular or molecular biology? He's a fucking idiot, and he doesn't want to get shots because it'll make him sterile. I say, Aaron, what's his name? Is it
Rodgers, yeah.
Aaron, do the world a favor. Please get vaccinated so you can get sterile and not pass on your genes to the future generations. Do us a favor.
All right, so
do a favor for mankind. Get a shot and become sterile, you dumb dick.
that may be an unfair characterization of Aaron Rodgers' intellect. I mean, he went to Cal,
do I give it?
Berkeley.
Do I give it?
Rodgers is a smart guy, but you bring up an interesting point. You bring and it's this: your sourcing matters, right? So just we talk about whatever you learned on Wikipedia. Write what you just learned on Wikipedia. If you're going to write about something and you're not trying to write polemic for somebody on the far left or far right, or a legal argument where the actual truth doesn't matter, but if you're trying to do something journalistic, it doesn't have to be balanced if the facts point one way or the other. Vaccination works, so writing or climate change is real. So writing a story that overloads one, that gives anti-vaxxers equal time to pro-vaccination. The medical community essentially, and those in the know, is bad writing too. But pay attention to your sourcing in addition to being informed, right?
If you're writing a paper on gun control,
if you want to write well,
only say.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, no. If you want to write poorly, we're talking about writing.
Yeah, sure.
Poorly.
Writing poorly, yes. Only the NRA.
Yeah, only the NRA. Just only cite stuff from the NRA.
All right. Another widely practiced but little understood secret to bad writing is keep the private private, as you might embarrass yourself by sharing personal insights and experiences.
Absolutely. Make sure that your prose appears as if it were written by an automaton.
Yeah.
Don't make the private public, okay? Because that would make you human. And in all of the arguments, I speak to all my lawyers, make sure that you avoid making the private public, because if you keep the private private, then no one will know the depth of character of the person you're defending, or the don't say any specific instances when you're arguing about a case in court, because we want to make sure that the jury doesn't see the complete picture of you.
Yeah. Well,
and since
in general,
if
you keep the private private, then any personal anecdotes, things like that could help make the argument that you're making or the story that you're telling more human, which is essentially maybe the fundamental, most important thing to do in good writing, is to bring it home in politics, in storytelling, in television, whatever. It's about people, right? It's about characters or animals, anthropomorphic animals and people. Let's put it that way, or anthropomorphic machines, but it's essentially people, right? That's for so that's for good writing. But for bad writing, yeah, just keep it to yourself, and then traffic, as we talked about, in abstractions, if you can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Widely practiced with little understood secrets to bad writing. Ready? This is more about information gathering again. Try to say whatever comes to mind about a topic, or write, rather, that is, without considering the key points. Just hammer it out. Don't rewrite it, and then hope that something interesting shakes out.
A perfect example. My attack on
Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers.
Still his name. Not changed.
Still Aaron Rodgers. I know nothing about this guy except he's probably, based on his, the little I've seen, he's a fucking idiot.
3-time MVP, NFL MVP. And
oh, boy, that makes me so impressed. Anyway.
in the most complicated position in sports. He's not an idiot, but he made a mistake for sure.
Wait a minute. complicated position in sports. There's an oxymoron if I've ever heard
I
it.
don't know, man.
Complicated
Quarterback,
in sports.
NFL, not easy.
I'll tell you, hey, that's really hard. Don't get tackled by the opposing team, and don't hit the guys with the striped shirts.
You know, the
It must be
Lions.
really hard
The Lions
for
have been
poor
bad for a
Aaron.
long time. They may be able to use you as a consultant.
I don't know who the Lions
Detroit Lions.
are. Okay, fine.
You know who they are, don't you?
I've really never watched them. No.
No, it's fine. No, you must be aware that the Detroit Lions have been awful since before, like your youth, essentially. So certainly before.
I know. I don't know. No, I don't know anything about the Detroit Lions. I know they're a football team.
That's fine. Yeah, and they're a bad one. That's all you really have to know is that they don't. The Lions don't win, and they find amazing ways to lose. So okay, so much for Aaron Rodgers. Aaron, sorry, I know that you've been watching this and you're deeply disappointed by our focus on you here. All right, so but back to that thing, and we'll move on, right? You gotta look at what you've got to say if you want to write well. If you want to write poorly, then truly just dump it on the page based on something you just learned and hope, because hope is a great strategy. But if you actually are interested in somebody reading what you write or getting a point across in a way that's valuable to you, because if you're writing's a pain in the butt, so you must be doing it for a reason. Then think through, okay, what am I trying to accomplish here? What information do I need to get that done? People are busy. Let's get it done relatively succinctly if we can. Use solid examples and structure it in a way that gets your main points across quickly and succinctly. And if it's not really contributing to the argument, a lot of times more is less in writing, right? The more points you put, the more you dilute the main ideas, generally speaking, especially if you're length constrained. That's if you want to write well.
You have skipped over a very important area in writing poorly. Make sure that you put commas and periods any place you feel like it. And if you have a question mark, put a semicolon. Don't put a question mark at the end of a sentence. And where you do put a colon, put a question mark. Vary your punctuational style, and it'll really marvelously help you to confuse your audience, your reader. So we need to remember that about punctuation marks, because they should be put at any place in the piece without any thought for where they really do go.
Yeah,
Because
they look similar, commas and periods particularly. I think they're basically interchangeable grammatically.
And by constantly misuse them, you further confuse the dumb reader.
Yeah. Sometimes you can put a tilde in there too. Whatever. Just random punctuation.
That's for sure.
Characters that you use like in a long password. Throw those in.
One of the best methods of writing poorly is put a umlaut over a consonant.
Oh,
that's a good one.
All right, last one has to do with
God.
Thankfully, widely practiced but little understood secrets of bad writing. Be inflexible and take it personally during the editing process, because editors are fools. Who needs them anyway?
That's right, because you know better than anybody else in the world what you're trying to say, and therefore don't listen to outside opinions, because they're going to hurt you. They really are. So if you want to write badly, don't have someone else proofread your essay before you turn it in, and don't ever listen to their suggestions, because they probably could be right, and you don't want to appear to be a good writer.
Exactly.
Because we're trying to be a bad writer.
Well, and fundamentally, you know what you were trying to say. They should too.
Absolutely.
So
there's no doubt about it. They should have my experiential world in the back of their minds, so I don't need to explain it, where I'm coming from, or why I'm saying what I'm doing.
And there's obviously all of these were facetious, and the point of this is not to write poorly, but it's a hard one. Being edited is hard, because writing is a personal activity, right? If you're writing poorly, it's not. But if you're trying to write well, then you probably are making the private public, as you have told your students for so many decades. You probably have spent some time on it, and you probably do think what's there, if you put some time and effort into it, is good. And sometimes things come back with a lot of red on them, or there are suggestions. If you take it personally, then that process becomes painful. And the reality is, having been edited a bunch, I can't think of too many times when somebody said cut something when I didn't, looking back at it, usually after not very long, thought, yeah, that's right, or
Yeah.
move this here. They're usually right, typically, if they're an editor of any skill. Now, there are cases where they're not, and as a writer, you need to make that, to be able to make that call. But going into, when you open that file up and somebody has beat it up a little bit, your going in position should be, I'm going to accept this stuff. I'm going to look it over closely. If I disagree, then I'll leave it, but most likely I'm going to agree. And I would say when I get edited, I'm accepting 90% or more of the changes that come through, typically. So, as was the case when we went through your biography, A Beard Cut Short, right? I mean, Pat and you beat me up a little bit for good reason, and I think the product came out better, and that applies to what writing I do day to day as a writer for a living. So that's if you want to do it right. If you want to do it poorly, take it super personally. Don't accept edits. And just see where it goes, because the editors and go ahead.
If you want to really be a bad writer, never reflect on the advice that an editor or a proofreader has given you. Just ignore it completely.
Yeah, for sure. Good. Yeah. Well, John, thank you for taking that time. I hope the folks that took the time to soak in these lessons on bad writing can internalize them and in the event that they decide to write poorly, apply them liberally into the future.
Do you happen to have Aaron Rodgers' home phone number I want to call and apologize?
I don't. I'll check that out, though. I'm sure he'd be super happy to talk to you because he's not getting any flack right now for any of these immunization comments that he's made. So, John, thanks again for taking the time. I hope people can learn to write less effectively based on our sage advice.
All right, I love you. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Love you too.